Hello everyone, I am cold case investigator and true crime novelist Michael C. Bouchard, coming to you from the Housatonic River Valley in Derby, Connecticut. The Night Stalker podcast will be brought to you in a series of 18 different episodes examining unsolved disappearances, homicides, and other strange events throughout New England and other parts of the United States over the past few decades. What makes a person kill? Even more, what turns a person into a serial killer? What makes a person lurk in the darkness, waiting for his next victim? Is it the thrill of the chase? The thrill of killing another human being? Or the thrill of never being caught? We may never know the answer to any of these questions, but I can assure you, as you sit here tonight listening to the podcast, somewhere a monster is lurking in the darkness, waiting to kill their next victim. For whatever reason, we all walk on the dimly lit path of life on this planet, telling ourselves it will never happen to me, it will never happen in this town. But do we really know that? I hope you enjoy each of the episodes and feel free to email me with any questions or comments at the link at the end of the podcast. Thank you for listening. Hello everyone, welcome to the Night Stalker podcast. I am Mike Bouchard. I'm going to be the host of this series. This will be episode 1, and this will be based off of my book, The Disappearance of Joan Carolyn Risch, case number 6162. Who was Joan Risch? Joan Risch was a mother and a housewife who disappeared from her Lincoln, Massachusetts house on October 24th, 1961, 58 years ago. Her current age today would be 88. She also goes by the name of Joan Bard or Joan Carolyn Natris. Occupation, editor and homemaker. Spouse, Martin D. Risch, deceased. Children, at the time, Lillian, 4, and David, 2. Her description: white female, 5'7", 120 pounds, last employed by Hardcore Brace and World, education, Wilson College, BA, English Literature, last seen wearing gray coat, 3/4 length, a blouse, a sweater, charcoal gray, blue sneakers, and a white pinup scarf. Unlike most podcasts, you're going to note that the Night Stalker podcast, all of the cases that we are going to be doing, and excuse me for thumbing through the pages as I do it, are based on the actual police reports and interviews that I have conducted with the people involved in the case. This report is actually based off of the original 5,157 page police report on the case. At the time of her disappearance, she resided on Old Bedford Road in Lincoln, Massachusetts. I'll also be clearing up a lot of disinformation that's been put out by other podcasters. Like I said, most of the information on these type of podcasts are recycled or generic, and in some cases actually bolstered. Joan was born in Brooklyn, New York on May 12th, 1930, to the late Harold and Josephine Bard. By the age of 7, her family had moved to New Jersey from New York. The first bone of contention on the local podcasts, they will report that Joan Risch's parents passed away in a suspicious fire in 1940. Actually, the date that they were they passed away in the fire was on February 27th, 1938. Many of the books and podcasts that are put out there infer in some type of really demented way that Joan at the age of 7 had started the fire, which is actually incorrect. At the time of the fire, Joan was with her grandmother in Brooklyn, New York. The fire that everyone deems to be suspicious wasn't suspicious at all. Basically what had happened was a fuse blew out in the apartment, which was located in Mountain Lake, New Jersey. The fire is actually deemed as accidental. When the fuse blew out down in the cellar, like with the old boxes, someone put a penny in there. Obviously, a penny is not going to overheat. An electrical socket behind the living room couch caught on fire, setting the couch on fire. Both parents died of smoke inhalation. There was nothing suspicious about it, although for some reason they seem to believe, I don't know whether it's for the wow factor, but this seems to be something a fact that's highly over-exaggerated and incorrect in most of the books and podcasts. Joan, after her parents died, Joan was adopted by her stepfather and stepmother, Frank and Alice Natris. Unfortunately, during her youth, she was sexually abused by the stepfather, Frank Natris. Even so, she still throughout the time kept in contact with him. I read a lot of handwritten notes that she had sent back and forth. Nothing suspicious in any of them. A little strained because of the nature of their relationship at the time, but there is a statement made by Florence Bard, and I'll read the statement right off made on August 3rd, 1962. Florence Bird: "Yes, I will. To Frank. He molested her when she was a young girl. I didn't know of this until after Joan had disappeared." So that's coming from an official report, as I said, dated August 3rd, 1962. There's a lot of suspicion around Joan Rish's disappearance. After reviewing most of the information that I have received in the actual police report and other interviewing some of the people that were witnesses, my thought compared to a lot of the common consensus is different, and I will get into that a little later in our conversation. I'm just trying to go through some of these notes. The book that I wrote is 400 pages, so it does take a few minutes to go through them. Okay, so let's just kind of do a sequence of events, a real quick Reader's Digest. At 6:50 a.m. on the morning of October 24th, 61, Martin Risch got up and left the house to make an 8 o'clock departure flight to Logan Airport to New York on a business trip. Okay, so he wasn't on scene when the disappearance occurred. 8:15, Joan talks with a friend, Sabra Morton, who I interviewed. I'll get into some of the interview a little later. Very interesting interview. It actually explains a lot. 8:30, Barbara Barker, the next door neighbor, called Joan to make sure Joan was dropping off her son before going to the dentist. She went to the dentist with her daughter Lillian, at the time was 4. A lot of wow factor is that some people believe that she actually went for an abortion. There was no physical evidence in the car, Joan's car, when it was brought back to the house that any type of medical trauma had occurred. After reading some of the police reports, the dentist, Dr. Paul Goldstein, basically stated he had no knowledge of anything wrong with Joan. Witnesses that were in the dental office said that Joan and the daughter left in fine spirits. She had actually made a second appointment, and that dentist office was located at 30 Shawnsing Road, actually street in Bedford, Massachusetts. Another, okay, let's see, 9:30 a.m. Joan drives Lillian to the dentist appointment. We get past that. Walter Colburn of Harvard, Massachusetts, who was a employee of Dudes at Concord dry cleaning company, had gone over to Joan's house. Didn't notice anything unusual. And as far as at 10:55, Joan picked up her son David from the Barker residence, returned home with both David and Lillian. Walton F. Colburn, age 22, another employed by Dude's cleaning service out of Lincoln. Arrived at the Risch home to pick up 2 business suits. Colburn said he entered the house and spoke with Joan, but did not recall anything out of the ordinary about Joan or the house. What you will notice, another aha factor I notice on a lot of the podcasts, is there is a picture of Joan's car that's parked in the driveway with a coat hanger. And again, and you'll a little farther down the road, you'll see why some of these things will start to make sense. There was a coat hanger. Now, some believe that the coat hanger was used for an abortion. However, the fact of the matter is the coat hanger was not manipulated in any way. It was a metal coat hanger. It was not manipulated in any way that could be used for an abortion. It's as simple as that. That's another one. At 1:20 p.m., Barbara Barker, the next door neighbor, brought her son David over to the Risch's house to play with Joan's daughter. Let me see. The next major, really kind of incident we have at 2 p.m. Joan brings the 2 children back across the street to the Barker residence. She told the 2 children she would be back in a little while. 2:10 p.m. Miss Barker was in her kitchen and said she heard Joan yelling, possibly at one of the children. Joan then looked out the window and saw Joan in her driveway. Barker reported seeing Joan wearing a trench-style jacket and moving quickly in an upright position. to the rear of from the house to the rear of the car, possibly holding something red. In a couple of the further interviews, at that time her son David was wearing a red jacket. Barker said she observed Joan running in a zigzag pattern as if she was chasing a child. So there we go. Instead of her carrying something red, she could have picked David up in his red jacket and been carrying him. Barker said one of the children said, "Oh, Joan, is chasing David. He is running towards the street." Okay, so that kind of eliminates the wow factor in Joan running across the yard holding something red, which also in a lot of podcasts refer to something as a bloody towel or what have you. The disappearance, based on witnesses' statements, we can estimate that the disappearance occurred between 2:15 and 2:50. Now, when you look at the picture of the Rish kitchen, you will see blood all over the place. During this podcast, we can't get into it too much because there's a lot of abnormalities in it. I've looked at them. I've noticed some high impact splatter, which in my professional opinion appear to all be manipulated and wouldn't occur naturally. Many of the media sources indicate there were only 3 sightings of Joan walking along 280A and Route 127 after her disappearance. However, there were actually 5. At 2:45, witness Georgia Wright reported seeing Joan walking along 2A in the direction of Concord. The time indicates that Joan had been home at the time of both of the events when Joan left the house and began walking down Old Belford Road, which actually means that it was hard to figure out. Barbara Barker, who appeared to be a pretty nosy neighbor, never observed Joan walk or leave the house, which was directly across the street from her. But she saw everything else, but she didn't see that. I'm just trying to get to our next. 3:30 p.m. Witness number 3, Robert Ward, observed a woman wearing a gray and white scarf with a design print walking southbound along the grass median of Route 128 in Waltham near the Charter House Motel. Ward stated the female had on a dark pair of flat shoes with mud on her legs. Now, it's also interesting because Mr. Wright's statement was handwritten in pencil. At 3:30, a couple minutes after that, Miss Barker said she walked Lillian back across the street. And this is where we have a conflict in the time with Robert Ward's statement and Barbara Barker's statement. And just keep in mind Barbara Barker's statement. You'll see where a lot of Barbara Barker seems to be in places where things could also be manipulated. Witness number 4, Joseph F. Hart, observes a woman wearing a gray coat and white scarf with her head down and mud on her legs walking south along Route 128. This statement was actually typed. The next big wow factor that we're going to dismiss is a blue and white, a blue vehicle that was parked off of one of the roads. I'll get to that a little farther down the road, but we actually have another, we'll go get back into Joseph Hart's statement. Joseph Hart said he observed a 1956 blue and white station wagon with a woman behind the steering wheel, parked along 128. This is not the same person walking. However, the same station wagon was observed by another witness who saw Joan walking only a few hundred yards away. So already we're starting to develop a pattern. At 4:08 p.m., Barbara Barker said she stopped at the Esso gas station to put gas in her car. In the official report, the gas station is listed as Country Garage on the Pass Road in Lincoln. Okay, there was a few conflicting facts in that story, but 4:15, Hilda Ziegler, a resident, reported while driving on Old Bedford Road, she stopped to let a two-tone color car pull out of either the Keene or the Hirsch's driveway. She wasn't sure. Okay, the vehicle then drove away on Old Bedford Road in the direction of the Haskell Air Force Base. There has been a lot of belief that a soldier or soldiers may have broken into Joan's house and had hurt her. However, out of all of the reports I've written, there's nothing to substantiate or indicate that any of that to be factual or truthful. Barker reported when she arrived home, she made a telephone call to a friend. Now, this is when she comes back from the gas station, a little after 4:15 p.m. She said, while talking on the phone with her friend, I saw Lillian walk in my driveway and then drove down the walkway. I hung up the phone when my child called me from outside of the house and said that Lily was crying. Lillian then said to me, David is upstairs crying and he is wet, and the kitchen is a mess, and mommy's gone. There's a mention that in a lot of these things that said that Lillian at the time said that the kitchen was covered in red paint. That is not accurate. When Miss Barker went over to the house, prior to calling the police, she actually went in with her son and Lillian. And it was actually her son that made the comment that the kitchen is a mess. Actually, no. Her son Douglas said to Lillian, did your mommy spill all the red paint? This is actually the first time that the red paint, being the blood, was on the floor. This was not a statement that Lillian had actually made. This was actually made by Douglas, which you can see now how many conflicting issues you have with the most of the reports that are out there. Now, here's another big thing. The telephone book. Miss Barker had re-entered the house actually several times, contaminating the scene prior to calling the police, because she hadn't called the police till 4:33 p.m. There was a phone book that was turned over, and it was on the emergency contact number, which they associated with Joan being hurt, Joan attempting to call for help. However, that is not factual. Miss Barker said that the open telephone book might have been on a different page before she touched it. So there in one of her statements said she touched the book, so there is no exact page that book was actually ever on, that page that the telephone book was ever on. So you can see how many conflicting stories you start to see here. Like I said, when I looked at When I looked at the reports, and I actually have photos of the house prior to the event and after the event, I had noticed a lot of inconsistencies with the blood patterns in the kitchen, in the upstairs bedroom, and throughout the house, even on the car. The blood on the car was smeared, but if you notice where the smear marks are, that the driveway was a dirt driveway, dusty, and some of the blood on the Jones vehicle was actually droplets, but underneath the droplets there was dust, streaks of dust on the car missing, which meant somebody's a piece of material or something was dragged across the car, which created the dust, the dirt to disappear. This is not a normal occurrence. A blood smear, yes. Blood droplets, no. If you look at the lower corner of the house, and I'm sure you'll all look at these photographs, under the phone you'll see in the corner there's a large quantity of blood. That small object that you see in there is a toy. I noticed underneath there to the right there was it attempted to look like a blood high impact splatter, but it occurred in 8 sequences of 3, which by nature would not normally occur. So it already starts to make me wonder. If you notice in the garbage can, a lot of theories are based on that there are people that abducted Joan were drinking, that there was a beer bottles, this and that. However, the stratigraphy of the contents of the garbage pail suggests otherwise. Martin Risch reported on October 23rd, the day before his wife disappeared, that there was that him and Joan had finished a bottle of whiskey. So that's the 23rd. However, the whiskey bottle is on top of the beer bottles, which would support an earlier statement made by Martin Risch that on the 21st and the 22nd his friends were over there drinking beer. So from a stratigraphy point of view, that would be correct. So the beer bottles were there 2 days before the scene occurred. Why there is a cardboard, 6-pack wrapper there, who knows? But the garbage can basically tells you, because even over the whiskey bottle there were cans of empty food, this and that. Then the telephone receiver. So, and FYI, which a lot of people don't know, is there were 6 prints taken off the telephone receiver, all belonging to Martin Risch. So there was none of them belonged to her, Joan, none of them belonged to anybody unidentified. And if you look at the kitchen counter, interesting thing, if there was an attack, on the right hand side of the sink there is a knife holder, which all of the knives are there, they're all intact, there's no blood stains anywhere. And then if you look at some of the other things, like the garbage can, the drawer where the garbage can came out of, it was underneath the sink, is a white, either wooden or metal door, but there's no bloody fingerprints on it, so, which suggests that the garbage can was taken out prior to the event. So all these people that are, giving the ah factor to the garbage can playing any type of incidental part of this, that's incorrect. It's not possible. There's nothing suggests that. I'm just going through another thing. Another interesting thing is there's talk about a blue car that was parked on Sunnyside Lane. The individual that owned the car, he had mental health issues. However, he was seen. His name was Harold Munder. He was a psychiatric outpatient from a veterans hospital located in Bedford. He was in the woods for 2 hours, and during these 2 hours, Joan was seen 5 times on 2 major highways. So this indicates that Harold Munder couldn't have anything to do with it, simply because he nor his vehicle moved from Sunnyside Lane. Another interesting thing is, if you look at the places where Joan was seen, in an hour and 45 minutes, 14 miles, unless Joan was in a vehicle, there's no way she could have physically made it to all of those points. It's just not physically possible. However, remember, there was also a report of another female driving a blue station wagon, which was seen twice. My notes here, the timeline suggests the disappearance occurred between 2:15 to 2:30. Statements indicate the vehicle seen by Keeney at the Rich's home was probably the same vehicle observed by Ward and Hart on Route 121, or 128, excuse me. Now, another interesting thing, which you have to realize too, is the amount of blood that was found on the floor in the Rich's home was barely enough to cause an individual to go into shock, let alone die. Simple as that. Now, there was an interesting thing. About a month after her disappearance, and a lot of people don't know this, that Mr. Martin Risch, received a phone call at his house, somebody wanting to speak with Flossie. Actually, his maid answered it, female voice. Somebody says, "Is this Flossie?" Well, Flossie was a nickname given to Florence Beard by Joan Risch. So what's the real possibility of anybody else knowing that name? What's the possibility of a person that was injured so bad that had dementia knowing in sequence the phone numbers to Martin Risch's house? Probably not a very, very good. So already here comes the suspicions of that, well, what really happened to Joan Risch? Now, here's an interesting fact. When I talked to Sabra Morton, her best friend, Sabra had asked Joan earlier that morning, before she went to the dentist, if she would be attending the June 1962 class reunion. Joan said no, because she planned on being pregnant. Okay, well, if we go back 9 months from June 1962, where do we end up? October 1961. So, right then and there, was she pregnant? Probably. Was it her husband's? Maybe, maybe not. It wouldn't be the first time that a person up and disappeared. The bedroom also, on one of the doors, I found impact splatter, blood stains. However, the tailors on the blood stains were going in different directions, which again is manipulated like somebody flicking their fingers. It doesn't happen in nature that way. So there are a lot of inconsistencies in the story. You know, there was also a Natural Park Service worker who was also accused of possibly being involved in Joan's disappearance, but after several interviews, it was determined that he had an alibi. He was actually with people. A lot of suspects, you know, were involved in the case. However, by statements and most of them had alibis. It was also suggested that her stepfather, Frank Natris, might have had something to do with it. However, his timesheet, back when they used to actually punch timesheets, he was in New York at the time of her alleged disappearance. And the reason I'm calling it an alleged disappearance, well, you'll have to read my book to see where I'm going with this. But let's just do a time frame sequence here, right? So 2:30, 2:45. She was seen on Old Belford Road, a distance 2.2 miles. Walking time would equal 44 minutes. 3:15 to 3:30. She was seen on Route A to Route 281 Waltham, distance 5.3 miles. Walking time would equal 110 minutes. 4:30 p.m. Route 124 Waltham to Route 128, I believe it's on the north side, Trapelo Road, distance 4.4 miles, walking time 88 minutes. Reported travel time 2 hours, real travel time 3.9 hours, total distance traveled based on witnesses' statement, it was over 11.9 miles. It just doesn't make sense. There was also a thing about all these books that Joan had taken out of the library, 25 of them to be exact, and I have a list of them in my book. As a matter of fact, out of the 25 books on her living room counter before she disappeared was Immortal Queen. One of the bigger books that gets a lot of note in there is Into Thin Air by Leopold H. Agnell. He went by the writer's name Carmichael. There are a lot of similarities. Most of the books had to deal with disappearances, transfer of fingerprints, all type of crime scene information, which may have some validity in this case, because if you read Into Thin Air, you notice that the woman hid her disguise by wearing a unnoticeable jacket. Well, isn't that similar to walking down a major highway with a bold white scarf on? Who wouldn't see you? Everybody would see you. So, based on that, could Joan have just been replicating something she read in the book? Pretty good possibility. Martin Risch was never considered a suspect. However, at the same time, Martin Risch, he was aggravated by the local and the Massachusetts State Police. He didn't believe that they had done enough to find his wife. So he wasn't really happy. Now, getting back to this phone call. There's a newspaper article that came out in December 24th, 62, a year and a couple months later. The article by Ed Corsetti and Harold Banks is entitled Rish probes your secret call. And this was the call where the female answered the phone at the Rish's house and stated that, the woman on the other end wanted to know if she was Flossie. We went over that. So we've kind of gone over, the highlights of the case. The book is 400 pages. There's just a lot of stuff going on here. There were several different theories on what happened to her. Some suggest homicide. Some suggested she injured herself and walked off and was never found. However, the abduction and the homicide, based on the blood-stained patterns in the house, really doesn't suggest either one, because if you're dead, you're not going to be walking up and down the stairs dropping blood all over the place, or walking up and down two major highways. So the theory on a homicide isn't relevant. The abduction isn't relevant, because if you were abducted, your abductor would not allow you to walk through your house leaving blood stains in the kitchen, going up the stairs, and in the bedroom. However, here's the problem again with the blood-stained patterns. There's a lot of blood downstairs in the kitchen. However, the blood lessens when she's walking up the stairs, which is a complete opposition. If your heart is beating, you're pumping more blood walking up the stairs, especially with an injury. So the blood does not, the blood patterns do not correlate with the information that's been put out there. It just doesn't work. So another interesting thing in my notes, Barbara Barker asked Joan if she wanted her to watch the children the next day, which would have been October 25th, 61. Joan said, well, no, because she was going over to Lexington. Maybe she already knew she wasn't going to be there, so, but, just kind of a quick summary. The murder theory we already discussed. The abortion theory, there's no indication that an abortion took place. As a matter of fact, Jones said that she was going to be pregnant. The kidnapping theory, the physical evidence, and the blood-stained patterns completely conflict with that story. The insurance plot theory, no evidence indicated that Martin Rish ever received any financial windfall from Jones' disappearance. The man in the blue car, we already discussed. His vehicle was parked stationary for over 2 hours when she was seen 5 times. There was another really weird theory, her being buried at a construction site along Route 128. I don't think I believe that. I mean, her scarf was bright white, and normally if somebody gets into a piece of heavy-duty equipment to do work, they're going to look to see what they're pretty much going to go over. The house fire in New York, we've already talked about that. It was not, there wasn't anything suspicious about it. So you really basically have two two real possibilities here. Theory 1, accidental injury or medical event. I would say that's the least likely of the two, based on some of the information that I have here. Theory number 2, a staged disappearance, which has a lot of similarities and facts pointing towards that. The book is a good read. It's a long read. I just was going through it, and the book was edited by a European company, which for some reason has some really weird ways of starting the next word right up against a hyphen or a comma. I don't know why. I'm just rereading this now. The book is in its 3rd edition. It's not an expensive book. I think it's like maybe $22. Some of the reviews, one was from Terry Sutton of Savage Watch. I don't know how Mike does it, but he got the information that was never released to the public about the case. The crime scene photos tell a interesting story indeed. The second one was by Micah Hanks, who does the Graylin Report. We are going back in time and looking at one of the most unusual disappearances in Massachusetts, let alone in the world. It is sensational and frightening, whatever might have happened to Joan Risch. It's a good read. It can be found on Amazon. If you want real information, I would suggest looking there for this book. I mean, it's not a money maker for me, but again, it puts the case in a real perspective. It doesn't bolster information to sell books or grab an audience. It's basically just a reiteration of the police report in 400 and something pages instead of 5,000. Well, it's been good talking with you. I will see you on episode 2, which will probably be the disappearance of Dennis Lloyd Martin from the Great Smoky Mountain National Park on June 14th, 1969. And until then, I will see you later. If you have any questions or comments, there'll be an email link at the end of this podcast. Feel free to ask me any questions or any input you have. Thank you.